voted against the Stormont brake regulations, the key element of the Windsor framework aiming to give the Stormont Assembly a greater say on how EU rules apply to the province. The vote was passed with 515 votes to 29, with Labour and other opposition parties backing it. Scotland's First Minister today issued an apology to mothers who were forced to give up their children for adoption. Nicola Sturgeon condemned the practice, which is estimated to have forced 60,000 women to part with their babies in the 50s, 60s and 70s.
The mothers who had their babies taken away from them, to the sons and the daughters who were separated from their parents, to the fathers who were denied their rights, and to the families who have lived with the legacy. For the decades of pain that you have suffered, I offer today a sincere, heartfelt and unreserved apology. We are.
Nicola Sturgeon. Now, RMT union staff have called off strikes that were due to be held at the end of the month. This comes as discussions continue between the union and the rail delivery group in the long-running dispute over pay, jobs and conditions. Members were due to take industrial action on the 30th of March and the 1st of April. The Prince of Wales has made a surprise visit to Poland to thank UK troops involved in the Ukraine war. Prince William praised the cooperation of British and Polish troops who've been working together to support the people of Ukraine and their quest for freedom. He met with the Polish Defence Minister as well as soldiers to personally thank them for working together. And just lastly, the US Federal Reserve has tonight raised its interest rate by 0.25 percentage point. The Bank of England is due to make its next interest rate decision tomorrow. Full coverage for you right here on GB News. Now, time for headliners.
Hello, I'm Andrew Doyle and welcome to Headliners. Joining me tonight to take you through Wednesday's top news stories are two of the most photogenic people here at GB News, Josh Howie and Cressida Wetton. How are you both? See what I'm doing there? I'm flattering you from the outset.
And it works. You look great as well, man.
That's what I was fishing for, but you took a suspiciously long time to get to the compliment.
I was just admiring myself.
My earrings.
Yeah, your earrings are wonderful.
Good earrings.
Yeah, match my tie. Very nice. We're coordinating. All about me. Anyway, we're going to have a quick look at the front cover of Thursday's front pages. We're going to start with the Daily Mail, which runs with Harman's face was thunder, Boris was as agile as a cat. Pure box office, but after 4 nitpicking hours, had a single mind been changed. A very dramatised headline there of the inquiry into Boris Johnson. The Guardian is running with flimsy Partygate answers leave Johnson on the brink. And The Telegraph running with the same theme, but from a different angle. Johnson besieged but defiant. And The Express has Boris, hand on heart, I did not lie to the House. And The Sun goes a bit differently. Goes Wills the freedom fighter, Prince in secret mission to Ukraine border. And the Daily Star, back to the Boris Johnson story. Yeah, but no, but yeah, but no, but Pinocchio clears up all the faff about parties at number 10. And those were your front pages. OK, we're going to kick off with Thursday's Mail. And obviously this is everywhere, Josh, isn't it?
It's obviously the big story. Boris Johnson has combed his hair.
Yeah, and he has made an effort.
I mean, that's how you can tell how serious this story is.
Exactly.
This is like the state of our nation is dependent on how well coiffed he is.
Because he didn't even do that when he went to Ukraine. You know,
total disrespect for the Ukrainians and what they're going through.
Absolutely.
But when it comes to saving his own skin, suddenly he's going to put some... maybe it's just I'm jealous before anybody tweets me.
Well, before we get there, so talk us through this.
Yeah, so obviously what we've had today, we had a nearly 4-hour interrogation, him going before the committee to defend himself for the crux of it being that whether he lied or not knowingly.
Whether he deliberately misled Parliament.
Parliament. And because he essentially said, no, I didn't do anything wrong.
Yes.
That is what he said at the time. And now he's saying, well, as far as he knew at the time, he didn't do anything wrong. And that's where, he's the guy who came up with the rules.
Yeah, so he should know.
Really should have known.
But then his defence, he's saying that, you know, Downing Street is an 18th century townhouse. It's very narrow and cramped. He thought that they were observing social distancing rules as much as was possible.
When you're sipping champagne, it's really important that you might be close to some. You're
Cressida, you're taking a different view here, I think.
Yeah, I agree with Sarah Vine at the Mail. I think it wasn't just about this, was it? It was about the whole past 3 years. It's just, I mean, at the very least, it's in bad taste, isn't it? When we're all sitting at home, unable to see our loved ones. Don't you feel some rage?
Oh, well, absolutely. I mean, the thing is that there are people, you know, a frontline worker was fined £500 for sitting in their car after a shift, eating some fast food. So the idea that he's breaking the rules that he set, it does make me angry.
Yeah, OK, but we can all talk about the breaking of the rules, but the key point about this is whether he did it, whether there was any mendacity here. It strikes me that from what I've seen so far from the committee, they won't be able to prove mendacity. They might come up with this verdict and say it was reckless, but they can't prove... I mean, the only smoking gun they've got is the testimony of Dominic Cummings. We might say that's a slightly partisan source, given that he's out for vengeance and has pretty much admitted...
Well, you can never prove what someone's actually thinking
but that's the point,
at the time, isn't it? But then what Boris Johnson said was, look, I believe that this is all for essential work purposes. And he sort of basically said was, we were following the guidance to the best of our ability.
Right.
Now, as is pointed out by Sir Bernard Jenkin, who's a senior Tory MP, said, who was very much on the attack today against Boris Johnson. Yeah. If Boris Johnson had said that in Parliament, then there wouldn't be any of this stuff.
There wouldn't be a problem.
The fact that he was so emphatic, there were no rules broken.
Can you see however, how this might actually work in Boris's favour ultimately? Insofar as a lot of people who are supporting him at the moment think that this is like a cabal, a Remainer cabal, who basically want to prevent him from going back into number 10, ultimately. And, you know, that probably won't happen. I don't think this is going to trigger a by-election because they don't have sufficient evidence as to say that he deliberately misled Parliament. That's the key thing. They don't have that, do they?
They don't, but at the same time, I don't understand people who are still supporting him when he's, you know, he's a liar.
Yes, flimsy nature of assurances.
This is the guy who was running our country.
I agree.
Sure, but I'm just talking about what the committee is there to achieve, and I just don't think it can achieve.
I don't think there is a smoking gun here. In that sense, yes, but I still think that anybody with half a brain why are people still defending him in terms of, like he did wrong? It's obvious he did wrong. We can't necessarily prove it, but come on, he was running the country, he knew the rules. He said, I didn't do anything wrong. And then there's all these photos of him doing wrong.
But do you take my point that this could be interpreted as a partisan affair? That this might be, that people perceive it to be the case, that Johnson is the only one...
conspiracy theorists.
No, it's not necessarily conspiratorial, insofar as a lot of people do believe that Johnson's the only person who could possibly beat Starmer, that Sunak wouldn't have a chance. And ultimately, that this might be interpreted in that way.
I think there's like you say, it could be interpreted that way, but I think actually they're wrong. I don't think that anybody is going to actually beat Starmer, and I don't think that he would necessarily do any better than Rishi Sunak, who seems to have actually been all right as a Prime Minister. He certainly hasn't destroyed the country like some other ones have. And I'd just like to say one mindful thing. There was something actually quite despicable within Boris Johnson's testimony, where he said that if it was so obvious that there was rule-breaking, then it would have been obvious to others, including Rishi Sunak. Essentially trying to bring Rishi Sunak down. That's like Weasley behaviour. That's really not cool. That's like going, well, if you're going to bring me down, you've got to bring him down.
Well, it's almost as though Boris and Rishi have some bad blood.
Well, it is almost like that, but I think that is really contemptuous behaviour.
But it is poor behaviour, but in his defence, it's also true, isn't it? I mean, I feel that way about anybody that was at any of these events.
Do you not feel, as many people do, that the committee has sort of already made its decision, and that it made its decision before it started analysing this so-called evidence?
I don't know. I don't know. No, I don't know.
You don't think so?
You think it's definitely so?
I'm putting the question to you.
No, I don't know. I think it could go either way.
OK.
I do like Sarah Vine's writing here. She gets very sort of allegorical, and she's like, this is the biggest court case since Johnny Depp, and it's like, I think you're reaching here just a little bit. And although I think he's a buccaneer and a charming rogue, just like Jack Sparrow.
But she makes she asks a good question here, which is, after these 4 hours, has a single mind been changed? Because my feeling is very much that if you're pro-Johnson, you still will be, and if you're anti-Johnson, you still will be. I don't think there is any kind
But I don't think anybody's mind will ever change on any particular topic that we ever talk about now.
Oh, I don't know about that. I like to think people are still capable of...
Really?
Having an open mind.
Rules.
I've got an open mind.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know.
OK, let's see if I can persuade you on something later.
OK.
Those earrings suck. No.
Those earrings are
No,
nice.
they're lovely.
How dare you?
I was just trying to
That's
reach for an
outrageous.
argument.
Outrageous.
Sorry.
OK, moving on
like
to
it.
Go
the
for the
Telegraph.
soft spot, John.
Cressida, what's the Telegraph running
What's the
with?
Telegraph running with? Well, they've also got Johnson on the front cover, of course. Besieged,
Strangling
but defiant.
Yeah.
He looks enraged. The cult of Boris, yeah, so...
But they've also got this other story there about not naming suspects put justice at risk.
Yes.
What's this? It's only a small article down at the bottom of the front cover, but crucial nonetheless. What's going on here?
Secret police plan could see sex offenders' names withheld from public. So
what would that mean?
That would mean plans being put forward to potentially protect the identity of alleged sex offenders pre-trial.
But so the idea is that if people are charged, because at the moment, if people are charged, their names are released.
Well,
and that's in order to preserve a transparency.
Yes, it's not definite, but the current wording is should be released. So there is some discretion, but the wording would be moved to can be released.
So, and obviously lots of people are concerned about this because they say that once someone is charged and the name is publicised, this often leads to other victims coming forward because, of course, they've seen... So that makes sense. But, Josh, isn't there some point here that actually sometimes there are occasions where you think maybe withholding the name might be wise? For instance, if you take the example of Operation Midland, where you have a complete fantasist who has incriminated all of these people, and then other people did come forward because other fantasists or people after money or whatever came forward and said, yeah, they did it to me too. And completely innocent people, such as Harvey Procter, such as Gambaccini, Paul Gambaccini, those sorts of people are dragged through the mud needlessly. And if you search their names now, what comes up is sex offences, even though they were innocent.
Yeah. No, it's a real tricky one because you had the former Metropolitan Police officer, David Garrick. He was arrested and they didn't reveal his name and he was let off. And it was only later on when Wayne Couzens, his crime was committed, that more people stepped forward. So if they had released his name at the time, the argument is that more people would have stepped in and then he wouldn't have got away with it.
Yes.
So it's a balance here between some innocent people and, you know, we had, people trying to commit suicide because then
and some successfully committing suicide because they've been falsely accused. So isn't it a case of just finding... I mean, isn't the language here, what they're going for is they're saying, for the most part, we release names of charged people, but there might be some circumstances where discretion or the option is available to the police. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I think so.
That's not a good idea because discretion and the police aren't necessarily two great things.
That's another problem, isn't it? Because you are relying on...
But don't you think overall we've got to come down on innocent until proven guilty, just because that's how we do legal things?
I would always say we need due process, absolutely. Because once you get rid of that, you don't have a... But they're not saying... When they release the names of people who've been charged, they're not necessarily saying... They're not saying these people are guilty. But the impact of having your name publicised in association with such a crime is the same as, isn't it? Because that's what people...
It's run to... once you've been charged, then people assume that where there's no smoke, fire...
Yeah,
smoke,
it is a difficult one.
There is something here on the Daily Telegraph that's also interesting, is, for some reason, it says here, the cults of Boris and Brexit are simultaneously imploding. Now, this is from a newspaper... traditionally very pro-Brexit, very pro-Boris Johnson. So the idea that they've got this editorial up front, which is kind of... seems to be going, wait a minute.
But isn't that quite good, that they're sort of
well, maybe
platforming different views and...
Maybe we did it, maybe I did it. Thanks.
There we go. To end this section, though, we're going to have a look at the front page of The Sun. They've gone for a totally different story than the Boris story.
Indeed. Wills, the freedom fighter, Princeton's secret mission to Ukraine border. So there he goes to Poland, and he's sort of... bigging up all the people for NATO, and there's a lovely photo of him on the front.
Is it a lovely photo?
Well, I mean,
is that the best photo
anybody who's bald gets my A-OK.
What's wrong with that photo, Chris? I think he looks all right.
If he was wearing red earrings, I think he would look a bit better.
Oh, leave them alone, Josh.
For sure.
I think that's really unfortunate. They've caught him just in a bizarre facial expression. I think they could have done better.
That's his freedom fighter expression.
Oh, is that what it is?
That's what he looks like. He's like, freedom fighting. Yeah,
well,
good for him.
I think nothing wrong with him going out there and making these gestures.
No,
no, it's great.
What is there to complain about? OK, those are the front pages, but after the break, we're going to discuss the image of Donald Trump in handcuffs, why the gender reform bill apparently helped the SNP, and one of the worst RE lessons of all time. See you in a few minutes.
We We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Thursday's newspapers with me, Andrew Doyle, and my 2 of the best comedians that GB News money can buy. It's Josh Howie and Cressida Wetton. Let's kick things off with a story from The Times and about our Prime Minister being absolutely minted.
He is. Rishi Sunak tax return shows he made $5 million in 3 years. This isn't really a surprise to anyone, but it says he paid some of it at a 20% rate, charged on capital gains. Now, I don't earn enough to understand any of what capital gains is, but it kind of makes me ashamed to be British, this story, because he only earned like 1.7 million a year.
Yeah.
That's essentially what it's saying. And it's like we're some kind of third world country.
Yeah.
Because prime ministers in other countries and leaders, surely they're raking it in way more than that.
I think the Sultan of Brunei makes a lot more than
exactly.
that.
And now I feel like Rishi Sunak should really up his game in terms of income.
Cressida, why is this news? We all knew that Rishi Sunak was fabulously wealthy.
We did. I'm not sure it is news, but he's the first Prime Minister to do this since David Cameron, so we've had a few that haven't done it.
Yes.
So I guess he's a good guy. He's being open with us about his
He did it
mega
during Boris's testimony today.
That's clever.
Yeah. Is that like wearing white to a wedding, then? He's just trying to...
Well, he's doing it at a time when the news are going to skip over it, but we're not. Didn't Theresa May publish her tax returns?
She did before she was a Prime Minister.
Right.
Now, Liz Truss didn't do it, but it could be that she was like, she had them already and then it was all over.
She didn't have time.
Well, that was what I'm saying. So she sort of, I got my... Oh, I'm not Prime Minister anymore.
Poor Liz Truss. OK, we're going to move on to this one from The Guardian on a rather troublesome RE lesson. Cressida.
West Midlands school criticised after death threats to gay Muslim speaker.
This looks like an absolute... This was a viral video, right?
Yes, and I watched it. It's horrible.
Talk us through what happened here.
So West Midlands school have invited a gay Muslim speaker in to talk to the kids about that.
Yes.
And some of these children are Muslim, and they're taking him to task on the idea that you can be gay and Muslim. He says you can, they say you can't. And it's just kind of erupted into this very antagonistic RE session.
But it's not a Muslim school, is it? There's just a lot of Muslim students at the school.
It's just in an area where there's a lot of Muslim students.
OK, so now this is really... Obviously, this is a bit of a hot topic, isn't it? And this article makes it very unclear on who is blaming who.
Exactly.
Hey, everybody, we all agree!
There we go.
OK.
Right, Josh...
So who do you think... Because which minority is more important?
It's maddening... And it's so in The Guardian, and they have tried to sort of hedge their bets, and this is what they do sometimes. They don't want to upset anybody, essentially gay people and Muslims. So they've sort of written this article that you can't really get the gist of who... They keep on talking about this parents group.
Yeah,
they're not like... They don't say what their position is, and you basically have to really... First, you have to do your own research. You find, it's actually a sort of... For Muslim parents, is what they're saying.
OK.
Is this group, and they don't ever sort of actually say that.
But they throw you because it says that the parents group wanted an apology for the speaker, which is a bit of a twist.
But actually, you know, this is something that we really do have to talk about. I mean, survey after survey shows that there is a significant proportion, some surveys have as a majority, of Muslims in the UK who believe that homosexuality should be criminalised. I think it was over 50% last time there was a major survey on this. Now, that's really bad because a lot of Muslims are gay, right? So some of these Muslim kids will be gay, and it's actually quite important, I think, for them to see a gay Muslim there saying, actually, that's OK, you're not this evil thing that everyone says.
Because it's tolerance, and that's what the UK is meant to be about, and this is what even one of the teachers started
So why is this?
Did you see
why is this speaker
being... the teacher? He was so angry, and I thought that's either a teacher that's just had to be a teacher for a long time and it's very difficult and he's just blown his top.
Yes.
Or I don't know, I guess he personally felt very passionate about it.
I mean, it's a tricky one because, you know, I do believe in religious freedom, and if you believe that homosexuality is a sin, that you are entitled to believe that. But the reality is that there are gay Muslims, and it's quite helpful for young gay Muslims in particular to be aware of that, right?
Of course it is, and I feel like the school has just really let down the pupils as well, because this school is sort of apologising and trying to sort of appease this group or whatever, and just go, well, wait a minute, no. Homosexuality is totally fine. If you have an issue with that, that's your problem.
Right.
And that's not what the school has done here. They've backtracked like every other school does.
Well, yes, and it's kind of like with Batley Grammar, they backtracked, you know, when someone was getting death threats.
Just take a stand, be brave, man.
Yeah, absolutely. OK, what about this from the Mail about Chinese influence? Josh, you're worried about China.
Well, speaking of bravery, China's a great country. I'm a big fan. 8 in 10 Britons are worried about the growing global influence of China. A new poll has revealed it was 9 in 10, but actually China managed to get in there and change it. Essentially, China is not a benign force of good to the world.
No. Well, you know, I mean, Sunak himself has cited this issue of their aggressive stance in the South China Sea with Taiwan.
He's sort of pushing.
He hasn't made it official, though, has he? He's just said they're not a threat, they're just an epoch-defining challenge.
Yes, no, I know he's being euphemistic and a bit mealy-mouthed, but he is talking about the treatment of the Uyghurs. He has mentioned that. It's not
They're
something
committing
ignored.
genocide in China.
Yes, exactly. So, and you know, you have to say their sort of stance on Taiwan is pretty explicit. I mean, they're talking about how they want to have it back by, 2025, I think they were saying?
Yeah.
They're not messing about. And maybe all of these world leaders are sort of staying a bit hushed because, let's face it, China probably will run the world, you know, and so they're like, well, let's look after ourselves, right? Is that what's going on?
Well, they certainly already control a chunk of it, and their investments within Africa, they put billions around the world to sort of bring on all these countries to their side and giving them a massive voting bloc. They're also supporting Russia. But the thing is, unlike America, even though people have issues with America and stuff like that, they are a despot-run country.
Yeah,
it's a slightly
they're not
different.
great on human rights. Let's just put it that way. So in that case, Cressida, given that they're not brilliant on human rights, and you know we've seen the treatment of the Uyghurs, we should be taking more of an overt stance on China and sort of calling out.
Sunak should be saying, making them an official threat. Is that?
Well, that's the question. Is that too far to sort of position them in that way? Wouldn't it be enough to just be a bit more robust in terms of the criticism?
So you're saying perhaps he should publicly diss the Chinese more?
Diss the Chinese is exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, he should release a rap song.
Although we're saying 8 in 10 Brits, but when you get into how many people are boycotting Chinese goods, it all gets quite wishy-washy at that point. It's less than half.
Well, because they have some great stuff.
Oh, they've got loads of great stuff. And, you know, I mean, I get all my board games, they're all made in China.
Yeah.
They're arriving in the post. And
look, I am robustly against China's aggressive stance in the South China Sea, but I'm not giving up some of their toys.
No, of course not. I mean, I'm not a hypocrite.
No, they're just well made.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, next story now from The Guardian about Donald Trump, an adult film star, and a pair of handcuffs. Cressida.
Trump wants to be handcuffed for court appearance in Stormy Daniels' case.
Of course he does.
Of course he does. He wants it to be dramatic. He wants to appear like a martyr. He thinks this is going to play into his hands. His advisors, not so sure about that.
No, but, you know, I think he might be right. Look, Trump was the one he didn't tweet it out because he's not on Twitter, but he put it out on Truth Social. I'm going to be arrested on Tuesday. Apparently he just heard that on the grapevine. But, of course, this would help him. His whole shtick is that there's an establishment that are against me and they're going to arrest me and they're going to lock me up and that's going to stir up his base. This is exactly what I want. Of course he wants to be in handcuffs.
Oh, I think it's absolutely genius because, first of all, him being handcuffed, that mirrors the tryst between him and
Stormy Daniels.
No,
well, I don't know the details of what happened there.
But I'm assuming there were.
I think he's understood.
And the other thing is, it's good because it's the only way to ensure that he doesn't grab any women's lady bits.
Well, there is that, so it's just a precautionary matter.
Yeah, it's just because he can't stop himself.
What do you think about this, Josh? I mean, in all seriousness, this, if it is the case that he paid off Stormy Daniels back in the day, and it was now going back 5 years, that would be a misdemeanour, which, according to the statute of limitations, isn't really viable anymore.
That's not really what the issue is. The issue is he did pay her off. What the problem is that he then basically used personal checks to pay back his lawyer.
Yes.
And then didn't pay any income, like tax, on that money.
But unless you can prove this is a felony, the statute of limitations is up.
Well, I think that is a felony, and that's why his lawyers are actually quite scared now.
It seems tenuous.
Well, the point is he broke the law, and if he broke the law, they're going to go after him.
Well, I don't think there's enough to prove this, though, is there?
Well, I think that they feel like there is enough. I mean, he's cashed, what was it, £130,000. He got these different checks that he sent.
But it's a bit like when they tried to have him impeached, you know?
It's a bit like Al Capone, like not paying taxes.
It just helps his case. All of this stuff
that's what he thinks it is.
You say that, but he might not be allowed to do it. District Attorney Alvin Bragg is saying he might not let him appear in his handcuffs because they know it's
I believe from what I've read that the legal consensus on this is that there isn't much of a case at all. And the case that they do have is classified as a misdemeanour and therefore can't be prosecuted. So I think this is unwise. I thought the impeachment was unwise. His popularity went up hugely.
I think the Christian... Yeah, you're right. The Christian fundamentalist fan base part of it will be like, yeah, he's brilliant. Look, he paid off that adult sex star that he slept with.
And, of course, we don't know for sure. He denies it, I should say, for balance. He denies that he slept with Stormy Daniels.
Yeah, that was just $190,000, you know, just fan...
Oh, come on, we've all paid people off just to get it out of our hair.
Look, I'm here, aren't I?
There we go. OK, ending this section now with Thursday's Times. What's this one about, Josh? This is a bit of a case of denial.
Oh, this is... Oh, my gosh. I really hope he wins. He's obviously one of the leadership contenders for the SNP. No, because he will just drive them into the ground. He is not the brightest spot. This is the headline. Gender bill row, boosted support for SNP suggests...
He's in a fantasy
Now, this is when the SNP has lost 30,000 members over the last year. A good chunk of them, I imagine, women, who are very upset with them putting through this bill. The public in Scotland and the rest of the UK also are against this bill.
Yes.
This whole idea of self-IDing and stuff.
That Sturgeon was putting through this bill, 2/3 of the electorate in Scotland were against it.
It's
the idea.
crazy.
Humza Yousaf saying, yeah, this boosted support is the opposite of the truth. That is Orwellian behaviour.
Well, this is...
What he's saying is... So what you're saying is they've lost more than 30,000 because... he's talking about churn, isn't he? If he's saying that actually people like this, we know they've lost 30,000.
Yeah.
So maybe they've lost more than that. If he's
no
implying
doubt
that they've gained some people from it, which I doubt.
But Humza Yousaf, I mean, he would be the worst thing to happen to the SNP if he became leader.
Yeah.
He's actually vowing to build up the progressive agenda. He thinks that he says he wouldn't amend the bill. He would ignore Westminster. After all of this, he still doesn't get it. And this is also the man who put through that draconian hate speech legislation which said we can prosecute you for stuff you say in your own home. The man is a lunatic.
He has now been recommended to be charged with.
Of course, yeah.
Because you can submit complaints on other people's behalf.
Yes.
Because he misgendered
Isla Bryson.
Bryson. So a complaint has been put in against him, which he said, of course, would never happen when he was pushing that bill through.
But of course it will. He set up these parameters. He said it's all about the perception of the victim, and that's now, well, there's now a victim who's complaining.
But this is the classic case of people being caught in a bubble, and he's talking about the support he's got, particularly amongst our younger members who've told me as such. This is just like Corbyn, like going to a few cranky Jewish people and then going, oh, they think it's OK, so everything's OK. You hear what you want to hear.
Yeah, absolutely insane. OK, we're going to move on to a break. We have to take a contractually mandated break now, but afterwards we've got tree felling in the name of the environment, why Beethoven's ancestors were adulterers, and Josh is going to vibe out hard, whatever that means. See you in 2 minutes.
Yeah, man.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
OK, welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Thursday's newspapers. This is Thursday's Express now. And has this eco-warrior council gone too far?
I think they might have done. Council backs plan to tear down 500 trees to build bus route to fight climate change.
To fight climate change?
Well...
Can you talk me through that?
They're claiming that if they cut down these trees through a lovely old orchard near Cambridge, that they're going to save between 90 and 210 seconds on a bus journey.
Right.
And therefore, presumably, more people will use the route, and therefore it will help climate change.
But don't the trees help climate change?
Well, you would think, wouldn't you? I don't know what 500 trees... I mean, how do you do the maths? I don't
think anyone's attempted to, but looking at those trees, they look like, you know, those big natural lungs for the atmosphere, aren't they?
You could fit a little bus in between them.
And you
get a small little bus.
A rickshaw.
One of those trains that goes
And that's
around...
that would employ people as well.
And is that a capybara there? What is some sort of animal?
I'd like to see that on the way to work.
So look, this is weird. It does feel a bit like doublespeak, doesn't it? So the council are saying we're going to bulldoze these trees in the name of the environment.
Yes.
Yay!
Yeah, of course it is.
The bus lane, if they do it, is going to cost £160 million.
Oh, great!
So maybe there's more money in bus lanes than trees. I don't know.
Well, it's a Lib Dem council leader says it's the UN report highlights the need to decarbonise economies. This is just a classic case of causing more harm.
Yes, but you've just solved it for me. It's a Lib Dem.
Yeah,
okay. Now I understand. Okay, Thursday's Times now. An intergenerational divide over gender identities. Josh.
Yeah, 1 in 4 Gen Z adults use genderless pronouns. So they did a poll with a couple of thousand people. It turns out that 18 to 24-year-olds. Just under half have their pronouns within their email signatures or social profiles.
But also a quarter of them identify with non-gendered pronouns, like they and them.
Yeah, so a quarter of them have no personality.
Yeah, interesting.
You know, I'm so glad we didn't have Twitter because when I was 18 to 24, I guarantee I would have been one of those days.
Would you?
Oh, yeah, I did some gender studies at university. I was convinced that we didn't need male and female at all. It was all a conspiracy. I don't feel that way now.
The thing is, though, if you had...
You're an adult.
Did you see that viral video of that young woman who talked... She's an employer.
Yeah,
she was talking about how if someone applies to a job and they've put their pronouns on it, I don't invite them to interview because they're likely to be entitled, aggressive, litigious, all the rest of it, which is true. You know, if you could just block everyone who puts their pronouns in their bios on Twitter, you would have a much better time of it. Because those people are just angry and, you know, very aggressive and not very compassionate.
Except sometimes it's because it becomes the fashion, doesn't it? You know, you see it on dating apps a lot, and I think, swipe left. But they're probably doing it because they think it's what people want to see.
Well, but they're making a big mistake because most employers are not within this Gen Z bracket. They're older than that, and they're a bit more liberal. They've got a bit more sense, and they're probably going to say, actually, you know, you don't want some pink-haired, angry, raging, frothing at the mouth employee who's going to complain about every little thing and claim to be a victim. You know, you don't want that in your workplace. You want nice people who can get on with people and aren't going to try and get everyone sacked because they overheard a joke that they misunderstood.
That's why I dyed my hair brown again.
That's why you did it.
For exactly that reason.
Yes.
But there is a serious thing here where, older people are much less likely to go along with this ideology. And what I wish they'd done is poll some of the younger people, because my teenage son, I know that they're over it.
Yeah, they are.
That's what. So I really think it's this Gen Z thing, 18 to 24.
Yeah, but what's the generation below called?
Just normal kids. I
hope so. Oh no, look, I imagine this is ephemeral. You know, this is just a sort of 30-year blip of weirdness, and then I think people will ultimately.
There's about a group of people about 7 to 10 years where there's just toxic people. Yeah. And then hopefully it reverts back to normal.
But I think you're right. A friend of mine who's a teacher just keeps telling me about all the kids in his class that they think all this is nonsense. Yeah. And they're in the sort of 14 to 16 bracket. They think it's hilarious.
Yeah, they've seen those older kids. They've seen what they're like. They've seen how nightmarish they are, and they reject it.
Thursday's Mail now, and are younger people better at multitasking, Cressida?
Apparently. Why do so many young people watch TV with the subtitles on? Experts reveal how growing up with TikTok has made it natural and why it's a good thing. So apparently 61% of 18 to 25-year-olds won't watch television without the subtitles on.
Right, but you know what this is about? This is because on those tweets and TikTok videos and everything, they always have, even if it's a clip of like a stand-up comedy clip or so, they always put the words up. And I deliberately make an effort not to look at the words because it actually ruins the experience of
Especially if it's stand-up.
Well, yeah, the timing's all gone.
They give the punchline before they've set up the joke. Don't read it. No.
So why do they want to do this?
Well, I think that they're arguing that because now younger people can focus on more different things. But you're absolutely right. It ruins the experience. I've got a friend of mine who has to use subtitles when I go around his house when we watch stuff, and it's because you read ahead, so the jokes are ruined, or you need it for season 1 of The Wire until you fully understand what the words are. But apart from that, you watch it with foreign movies because, of course, you don't understand the language.
I learnt Norwegian before I saw The Killing because I wanted to experience it as the artist, the director wanted it to be. Yes, I bloody did. Right. Guardian once again. This one's all about the vibes, Josh.
Vibe check.
You're quite vibey.
I'm so super-duper vibes. I'm all about the vibe. By the way, I'd like to apologise to Cressida's mother about my earrings, about the comment about your earrings. Just because it was just a joke at the time, but I did not mean it. I love them. Anyway, vibe check. Sorry, Cressida's mum. Vibe check. what does the most overused word in our era actually... So first of all, our era, what are they... They're basically saying from 1960 to now.
Do they mean from the early modern period?
Yeah, essentially. and they're saying it's the most overused word. Vibe is not the most overused. Transphobia would be the most overused
I rarely hear the word vibe.
No one used the word vibe.
I feel like I hear it.
Do you?
Or see it.
I don't know anyone who
People
says
have this phrase, they say, good vibes only, which I just think is like, oh, yawn. It means people that can't cope with life. I think it's people that don't want you to ever be in a bad mood.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Cressida, it's not a word I hear very often. You know, when I think of vibe, I think of Paula Abdul's song Vibeology, which is, well, it's one of her lesser-known hits from the early 90s.
I've got that.
You've got Vibeology.
I've got it on tape.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Cassette.
Good for Paula Abdul. But the thing is, it's just not really an overused word. So why have The Guardian written this weird article about this word that we don't care about?
This really long article
It's so long.
has given me some bad vibes.
20 pages long.
Basically, they're just saying, essentially, they like... And it's also written like somebody... I know it's going to become a real cliche of saying this, but it feels like a chat GPT article where someone just Googled a bunch of stuff and smashed it all together.
Yeah.
It's like the history of the word vibe in good vibrations.
Maybe The Guardian were running low on stories. They didn't have enough feminists to bash, so they just wrote this instead.
I think so, but this is going to lose... This article will lose them some more subscribers.
Well, good. It's about time it goes. Anyway, this one from The Telegraph now. This is an odd one. Cressida, what's this about? Beethoven's
DNA reveals one of his ancestors had an affair.
So?
Yeah.
I think all of our ancestors, at some point, someone had an affair.
It's possible, isn't it, for all of us? He died in 1827, age 56 of cirrhosis, and they found some of his hair, so they've been able to get his DNA, and the idea is that he might have had... The genes are suggesting he might have had a liver problem, and he drank quite a lot. They've got some notebooks that reveal he drank quite a lot.
A lot of artists do.
People did.
Yeah.
So I don't know how confident they can be. What I love is there's a quote from him. He says... My nature shows that I do not belong among this plebeian mass. So I think he might be related to Kanye West. Might be some...
It's very, very possible. I mean, look, this is kind of interesting if you want to say that he's not an actual Beethoven because, you know, his paternal line was broken by adultery. That, for historians of musicology, that, I suppose, is quite interesting. But it doesn't really matter if Beethoven's
It's a very confusing article because I don't understand how, like... We're talking about Beethoven the dog, right?
Yeah, the dog. Yeah.
So how does he talk? How does he have journals? Why do they care about his lineage?
I'll bet you've actually seen that Beethoven dog film.
I've got 5 kids.
Oh, yeah, so you have to watch it.
On repeat.
If we've got his hair, can we clone him and get another symphony out of him?
I don't know if that's how it works.
Isn't it? I've seen Jurassic Park.
Oh,
you watch your dog films, I watch my dinosaur films. I know this stuff.
Yeah, I'd also like how they said we can surmise from his conversation books, which he used to communicate with people, that his alcohol consumption was regular, increased towards the end of life. And I imagine it's because he basically was just slurring his handwriting as he got more wasted.
I'm sure that's what happened. OK, right. We've got to take a break now, unfortunately, but after the break, we've got smelly ants, haunted dolls, and the joys of being left-handed. See you in a minute.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Thursday's newspapers. OK, Josh, diverse acting nominations.
This is very good news. BAFTA TV Awards 2023 Mature Leading Actress nominations hailed as victory for diversity. This is from someone who works at BAFTA, and they've basically said it doesn't matter that there's less people, ethnic minorities, who've been nominated this year because we've got loads of old women.
OK. Well,
that's the gist of that.
I've got an idea.
Old women over 40. Over 40? Why aren't they dead?
Why don't we just, when it comes to awards for films, give the awards to the best actors and not worry about their demographic?
That's crazy talk, mate. Crazy talk.
Focus on what they are,
I think
not
it's
what
quite
they've
cool.
done.
The average age of the leading actors that are nominated are 50, whereas the average age of the leading actors is 48. So go women, yay!
I think that's pretty close. I mean, that's not much of a...
Yeah, but women are ahead.
People are just obsessed with diversity. I mean, actually, BAFTA are now saying you can't be eligible for an award unless you have a certain percentage of diversity within your crew, even.
No.
It's absolute nonsense. You know, and there are certain films you want to make... What if you want to make...
Snow White? No, that's
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, that wouldn't work.
It's not relevant.
But if you want to make a film about, you know, a particular time period and culture which was kind of ethnically homogenous, what do? Just artificially bung a few people in who shouldn't have been there? What's going on?
Also, with something like... what was the one which was set in Africa with the Queen, the African Queen, you know...
The African Queen? There's a film called that?
Is that what it's called? No, it was a film that came out this year. And it was all about, I think it was just called The Queen's...
Warrior?
The Warrior...
We could do this forever.
But whatever it is, the point is everybody in the film is black because obviously that's when the setting is and stuff like that. But then of course in Africa at the time they're the majority.
Yes.
So that's quite an interesting thing.
Well,
is that diversity?
This is why just worry about the story and tell the story as you want to tell it and not worry about all this nonsense. How about that?
I don't know. I don't think it'll take on.
No? OK. Well, what about this one? Pulitzer Prize-winning bit of journalism from the Metro, Cressida. This is incredible.
Apparently, some people can smell ants, and here's why.
Smell ants?
They can smell ants. Now, I can't smell ants. Not that I've ever tried. I would...
Have you stuck your head in a
hasten
hive?
to add. Well, no, exactly, but apparently
Do they have
some
hives?
people...
No, ant hill.
Hill?
What are they called?
Yeah, they don't have hives.
They must be able to smell the...
Ant hills.
You've got to smell them because those ant-eaters with the big long noses...
Yeah, but we're not ant-eaters.
Well, we're not ant-eaters, but maybe some of us are partly... You know the coriander thing? Some people love it, some people hate it.
Never heard of it. Apart from when I read this article.
It's in your genes, isn't it, whether you love it or not. Some people say it tastes like...
it?
I love it. Some people say it tastes like soap. There you go.
So wait, people are genetically predisposed to like coriander?
I believe so, because the opinions are so one or the other. People either report...
Well, I think it's all right.
Well...
I think it's OK.
There's balance. Anyway, ants, apparently, if they're squished on the floor, they can smell of blue cheese or citronella, and it can be so strong that it even scares bears away.
Wow, OK.
But not me. I love squishing ants. But if they want to get rid of me, they should smell of peanut butter. I'm just saying.
Because you hate peanut butter.
Hate peanut butter. So I'm just saying, if the ants don't want me to squish them, then develop that skill.
Do you ever think that the worst way to die would be to be eaten by ants?
Yes.
I will now.
Yeah.
Well, that was in the Indiana Jones movie.
They used to do it all the time. They used to put people, bury them in the sand, smear their faces with jam, and then the ants would eat their heads off.
But if they did it with peanut butter, it'd be even worse for me.
Even worse. OK, well, one of my favourite horror tropes now in the Daily Star, creepy dolls. Before we begin, let's have a look at this video.
A bit of a history, hasn't he?
He has, yes. He came to us from Texas, and back in the day, they would make things like George in memory of past loved ones. The difference with George is the past loved one, George now has his glass eyes and his hair.
Whose hair and eyes?
The family member that passed over.
Really?
Yes.
That's very spooky, isn't it?
Josh, what's going on here?
That can't be the real person's eyes, unless that person had two glass eyes.
They were glass.
What's the story?
The story is bargain hunt fans horrified by haunted doll with dead man's eyes and hair. This is something they used to do back in the 1930s, where they would make a wax effigy of loved ones. They started with kids, but also they did with adults and stuff. And this one, supposedly, people would get headaches when they were around it, and a medium said it's because he wanted his hair back. And I know the feeling.
So this is a haunted doll, basically. The spirit is in the doll, yes?
Is it, or is it a fantastic example of taxidermy? Well, it's not taxidermy, is it? Because
no, we haven't stuffed the dead man.
No, but it's similar. It's along the same lines, isn't it? There's a shop in Islington full of dead birds and such, and I think this would go down really well in there.
Do you find... I mean, I think the horror trope of the possessed doll, I think Child's Play, the first Chucky film, is a brilliant piece of work, and that is about a serial killer who puts his soul into a doll. So the doll is not alive, it's just simply possessed. And I think that's a wonderful idea.
Oh, well, I was just thinking I'd like to be... I wouldn't necessarily like to have my soul, but I like the idea of me existing as a sort of wax doll. My kids can play with me, if anything happened, or my grandkids or whatever. But I'd like to think I'd be like a really good wax...
No, I think if you come back as a doll, you have to be a serial killer.
No, I would be like, hey, I'd be like the bear, you know, in Ted. I'd be I'd be really cool. And hang out with the kids. I'd love it. I think this is a really good idea. I think that it's a shame that whole idea of these wax effigies kind of went out of fashion. I'd like to bring them back.
Yep.
Hear me, kids?
There you go.
Wax me up.
On that note, we're going to move on to this one about the devil's hand. Cressida.
Telegraph, if you're left-handed, you might be at a puzzling disadvantage. So the Telegraph's puzzle editor... Why didn't they mention that in the careers sessions at school? You could be the Telegraph's puzzle editor. Has been alerted to the fact that some people are at a disadvantage. 12% of the population are left-handed. And because of where they put the clues on the page for the crossword, for left-handed people, it's more difficult.
Oh, we're constantly bending over backwards for these people, aren't we, these left-handers? They've got their own scissors, they've got their own rulers. You know, why don't we go back to the old days where we sort of used to burn them until they wrote with the right hand?
I'm left.
Well, I think this is just...
But I can't do the Telegraph crossword. But not because I'm left, because I'm thick.
Maybe it's connected. Our producer, Richard, is left-handed. He was very anxious that we cover this story. He thinks that it's a real civil rights issue.
Does he?
Yeah.
Well, it's also just pushing people to do the quiz online, because then the clues appear in a different place.
Yes.
So...
I think they might have a point here, actually. You know, the world is built for right-handed people, isn't it?
It's about 12% of the population are left-handed.
Yes.
But there's something very interesting here about Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, all are left-handed.
Is that right?
And so, but this is it. They say the reason is because on television, it seems, because everything's the opposite, it makes them look like they're right-handed, so people identify with them more.
Ah.
So... I'm going to start writing a lot on headliners, just to sort of build up a nice fan base. Look at me, everybody. I'm just like you.
That's what you need.
So there we go.
You're not out for support from the left-handed community.
I'll take any lefty support.
Why don't we have those sort of people up in arms, left-handed community? You know, every other community. You know.
Well, this could be the start.
Yeah,
couldn't it?
the next thing.
And they do have historic
Yes.
reasons. There's lots of religious imagery that is prejudiced against the left-handed.
Absolutely.
Christ is said to have sat at God's right hand. Judaism speaks of the right being associated with strength. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, that's why they shun me. Weak Josh is what they call me in my community.
We are going to finish with a story now I identify very strongly with. Josh, what's this one?
Misophonia. 1 in 5 have a condition that makes noises unbearable. And if they experience high levels of distress and panic when hearing certain triggering sounds, like Corbyn. Oh my God, that fits on you.
So it's actually people eating popcorn, eating crisps, those kind of things. It is really sniffing's very annoying.
Sniffing drugs as well.
Yes.
But it's not just annoying, is it? They're saying that these people get a physical flight or fight response. And as an arachnophobe, I have some sympathy.
OK, well, look, the show is nearly over, unfortunately, but let's have another quick look at Thursday's front pages before we finish. The Daily Mail is running with the Boris Johnson committee story. They've got Harman's face was thunder, and a big, long, dramatic headline that I'm not going to read out now. The Guardian has flimsy Partygate, answers leave Johnson on the brink. The Telegraph has Johnson besieged but defiant. The Express, Boris, hand on heart, I did not lie to the House. And the Daily Star, they're sceptical. Yeah, but no, but yeah, but Pinocchio clears up all the faff about parties at number 10. That is all for our show tonight. Thank you to my guests, Josh Howie and Cressida Wetton. Headliners is back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. And remember, if you're watching the 5 a.m. repeat, stay tuned for The Breakfast Show, which is on just after the break.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one.
Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good evening. A busy day in the Westminster Village. The government wins a vote with a big majority on the so-called Windsor framework. I'll explain tonight to you why I think that's a very big long-term mistake. And Boris Johnson being grilled for 3 hours by a parliamentary committee this afternoon. The question has to be, can he survive? Will his political career continue beyond this? And on Talking Pints, I'll be joined by retired US Admiral Michael Hewitt, who now works in the nuclear industry. I'm going to ask about small modular nuclear reactors. Are they practicable? Are they possible? Could they be the answer to the net zero challenges that so many seem to believe in? But before all of that, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you, and good evening to you. The top story on GB News tonight. Boris Johnson has told the Privileges Committee, hand on heart, he did not lie to MPs over Partygate. The former Prime Minister says, although he takes full responsibility for the gatherings in Downing Street during lockdown, his statements in the House of Commons had been made in good faith. He went on, though, to criticise the committee of bias in its investigation, and particularly the chair, Harriet Harman, of being prejudicial, suggesting the proceedings were extremely peculiar.
I really must insist on this point. People who say that we were partying in lockdown simply do not know what they are talking about. People who say that that event was a purely social gathering are quite wrong. My purpose there was to thank staff, to motivate them in what had been a very difficult time and what was also a very difficult day in which the Cabinet Secretary had just resigned.
Boris Johnson, well, the current Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has seen off a backbench revolt today by Tory hardliners opposed to his Brexit deal with Northern Ireland. 22 Conservative rebels, including Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, voted against the Stormont brake regulations. The key element of the Windsor framework aims to give the Stormont Assembly a greater say on how EU rules apply to the province. Well, the vote was passed with 515 votes to 29, with Labour and other opposition parties also backing it. The RMT union has suspended strikes due to be held on the 30th of March and the 1st of April. That comes as discussions continue between the union and the rail delivery group in the long-running dispute over pay, jobs and conditions. And police have today linked 2 attacks where men were set alight in both Birmingham and in London. And a warning if you're watching on television, we're about to show the video of the moment a man was set alight. Some may find it distressing. CCTV footage shows one of the victims, Mohammed Reyes, walking home, being approached before he was sprayed with an unknown substance. Police say it's linked to a similar attack on a man in Ealing in West London last month. A man's been arrested on suspicion of 2 counts of attempted murder. Now, Scotland's First Minister today issued an apology to mothers who were forced to give up their children for adoption in the 50s, 60s and 70s. Nicola Sturgeon condemned the practice, which is estimated to have forced 60,000 women to part with their children. 33 people have been injured after a ship toppled over in a dry dock in Edinburgh this morning when the vessel, which belongs to the Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen, became dislodged. It keeled over at an angle of 45 degrees. 21 of those injured were taken to hospital for further treatment. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. You're with GB News, the People's Channel, where now it's time for Farage.
Well, a very busy day here in the Westminster Village. It all kicked off with Steve Baker, yes, the Northern Ireland minister, issuing the most bizarre statement demanding that Boris Johnson back the Windsor framework, else he might be thought to become a Nigel Farage. We'll talk a bit more about that later on. The vote happened in Parliament and the government won with an absolutely massive majority. There were 23 Conservative members of Parliament that rebelled. And I'll talk a bit more over the course of the next hour about the Windsor framework and why I think it is far, far away from the spin that Rishi Sunak put on it. I have to say, I feel that Euroscepticism in the Conservative Party has gone back to where it was at the time of Maastricht, 30 years ago, when 26 Tory MPs voted against third reading. That worries me. I'll tell you more about that. But then it was Boris Johnson up before the committee this afternoon, about 3 hours of interrogation and grilling. Well, people will have to make their own minds up, including the committee, and the committee have to report over the course of the next 3 weeks. Did Johnson willfully, deliberately mislead Parliament? But more importantly, they were also looking for, was Johnson reckless in what he said to Parliament? Now, that's a much lower bar than you'd ever get in a criminal court. If it turned out that Johnson was suspended for 10 days or more from the House of Commons, then that would trigger a process that would inevitably lead to a by-election in Uxbridge, his constituency, which I've no doubt he would lose. It would effectively, I think, be the end of his political career. What did I think of the testimony that he gave? Well, when he said that the leaving parties were essential, I was reminded that at that time, we were told to stay in our houses, to only leave for an hour every day, not to go and meet our elderly or dying relatives, not to socialise in any way at all. And the head of state, I suppose, the Queen, set the most extraordinary example, because there she was, in a chapel in Windsor, at the funeral of her husband, sitting there on her own. And while she was doing that, the people that were making the rules that we were supposed to abide by, well, the Prime Minister says he didn't really understand the rules, so he had to get counsel, and he was given guidance. He told the House of Commons again and again, I was told, no rules have been broken. Today it turned out that the people he got the rules from weren't people like Simon Case, the Cabinet Secretary. No, there were people like Jack Doyle, press officers, junior press officers, young people who he himself had appointed. I have to say, I found his response at times slightly rambling, repetitive, angry, irritable. But the big question is, can he survive this? I think he probably will. Give me your thoughts, Farage at gbnews.uk. And I think he'll survive it because they will not, it seems to me, absolutely be able to prove that he lied to Parliament. That's my guess. To get a more dispassionate view, I'm joined by GB News political reporter Olivia Utley. Olivia, what's the talk over the road post this grilling, I guess is all we can call it?
Well, yes, there's no feeling that Boris Johnson sort of covered himself in glory, but nor is there a feeling that it was an absolute fiasco for him. On a number of issues, it felt like Boris actually had the upper ground. The committee were trying to build a case that it was obvious to Boris Johnson that he broke the rules. And he made the argument, and he made it quite well, that if it was so obvious, why would, for example, there be a number 10 official photographer there? Why, when it was reported in the Times, did no one really raise an eyebrow? He also did quite a good job of sort of lumping himself in with the civil servants who were at these gatherings as well. And essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but saying, well, if I broke the rules, didn't they too? On the other hand, there were a few areas.
I have to say, I didn't find that very